Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Dr. War. Today's episode focuses on the zeros of a polynomial given a graph. Now below I have two graphs and we have to identify the values that represents a zero, solution, or root. Please note that all three of these words mean the same thing. So sometimes on the task test they'll ask you to find the zero or the solution or the root. All three means the same thing. Now, if they ask you to find the zero of a polynomial, just note that the zero is referring to the x-intercept. And we all know that the x-intercept is where your graph cuts the x-axis. Remember, this is your y-axis, that is your vertical line, and the horizontal line represents your x-axis. And your x-intercept is where your graph cuts your x-axis. Therefore, the zeros for this first graph is this point, this one, and this one. So your graph is cutting your x-axis here at -2. And if we wrote it as a point, it will be -2, 0. Because you have a value for x, but your y is 0. Here, your 0 is at 0. And your y value would be 0. And here, your final 0 is at +1, but remember, your y value would be 0. So notice all your y's are zeros, and you actually have a numerical value for your x, except for the one that crossed the origin. Sometimes they can write their answer as a point, like how we did here, -2, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0. Or they can write it as a set. They can just write it as -2, 0, 1. Simple as that. Now, sometimes they may ask you to write the factored equation. Now, in order to write the factored equation, you need the zeros. We have 3 zeros, therefore we're going to have 3 parentheses. So notice I'm opening 3 parentheses, and within your parentheses, you're going to have an x in each of them. Now the number you're going to place in here is your 0, but you're not going to place your original value. You're going to place the opposite. Here, this was -2, so in here would be +2. You always place the opposite when you're going to pair it with the x. This is 0. Now remember, there's no opposite for 0. 0 is 0, so I'm going to just put +0 for the time being. And then here, this is a +1, so I'm going to write the opposite, which will be -1. Anything added to 0 is itself. So x plus 0 is just x. So this will just be x. And then I have x plus 2 and x minus 1. Notice I have 1, 2, 3 x's. If I actually had to multiply this, this would be an x to the third function. I'm not going to multiply, but because you have 3 zeros, this indicates that this function would be an x to the third function. So your zeros tell you how many solutions you have, and also it tells you your greatest exponent. Let's try another example. Over here I have another graph and I have to find the zeros. So wherever I'm bubbling in red are your zeros. So I have a 0 at -3, so this will be -3, 0. I have a 0 here at -1, 0. Over here, 1, 0, and over here, 3, 0. My zeros are -3, 0, -1, 0, 1, 0, and 3, 0. Now, if I have to write the factored equation, since I have 4 zeros, I'm going to have 4 parentheses. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each of them will have an x. So let's put those in. And remember, when you're going to put in the value, you use the opposite. This is -3 plus 3. -1 plus 1. +1 in -1. +3, -3. And you have the factored equation. Again, because you have 4 zeros, this function is an x to the 4th. So here, notice they gave us the equation. It says the graph of y equals x to the third minus 4x squared plus x plus 6 is shown below. Now notice here, your greatest exponent is to the third. And they want us to find the zeros. 1, 2, and 3. Notice our graph cuts the x-axis 3 times, indicating that you will have 3 solutions and your greatest exponent would be 3. Remember, this is your origin, so this would be -1. Okay, this is 0, 1, 2, and this would be 3. If we wrote this as a point, it will be -1, 0. This would be 2, 0, and this would be 3, 0. Now, if we needed to write this in the factored equation, this would be x plus 1, this would be x minus 2, and this would be x minus 3. Over here, they want us to identify the zeros of each function below. Your zeros are where your graph cuts the x-axis. 1, 2, 3. So I know that this graph would be an x to the third function. My zeros, this would be 3, 0. This would be 1, 0. And this would be 4, 0. And if I wanted to write the factored form, this would be x, and we're not going to use, sorry, this is a -3. We're not going to use -3. It's going to be a +3. This would be x. Again, don't use +1. Use the opposite, -1. When you have to pair it with the x, always use the opposite. And this is a +4, so that will be x minus 4. And that's your factored equation. Let's try some multiple choice. The first one says, the graph below represents functions defined by polynomials. For which function are the zeros of the polynomial 2 and -3? So we're looking for the x-intercept. So we're looking for the graph that cuts the x-intercept at 2 and -3. Over here, if we start with the first one, that's 0. If I go to the left, that's -1, and that's -2. Okay, this is a +2. We can eliminate the first one. Okay, if we look at the second one, graph is not cutting the x-axis at all, so we can eliminate the second one. Okay, the third one is cutting the x-axis. If we go to the right, that's 1, 2. So here, this is +2. Let's go to the left, -1, -2, -3. Answer is the third graph. A cubic function is graphed on the set of axes below. Which function could represent this graph? Let's find our zeros. 1, 2, 3. This is occurring at, okay, we start here. We go to the right, that's a +1. Okay, if I go to the left, this is a -1, -2, and this is -3. When we write our factored equation, we're going to have an x plus 3. Since that's a -1, x +1. And because that's a +1, the opposite will be x minus 1. I'm looking for x plus 3. Okay, I can eliminate the first one. This has an x plus 3, a +1, and a -1. Our answer is number 2. Sometimes they'll give you the graph and you have to identify the equation, or they'll give you the equation and you have to identify the graph. And it says, refer to the graph below. Which function represents the graph above? I notice that my graph cuts the x-intercept 1, 2, 3. This represents an x to the third function. Therefore, I can eliminate a because that's an x to the first. I can eliminate b because that's x to the second. So my answer is either C or D. And to figure out which one it is, I'm going to use plug and chug. Now I notice that C has 3 terms and D has 2. So I'm going to start with D and just see if I can use the process of elimination. D is x to the third plus 27. So I'm going to plug in -3. So -3 to the third plus 27. -3 to the third is -27 plus 27. And we know that when the signs are different, we subtract and you get 0. So I got a 0 for the negative 3. We're going to have to plug the 0 in. So I have x to the third plus 27. Okay, x is 0, so that's 0 to the third plus 27. 0 to the third is 0 plus 27, and your answer is 27. It didn't become 0. Therefore, my answer is not D. C is your answer. Which graph represents the function f of x equals x cubed minus 4x? The leading exponent is a 3. So we're going to look for where our graph cuts the x-axis 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So our answer may be A. Okay, this is not cutting the x-axis, so we can eliminate C. This is cutting 1, 2, 3. So B could be a possibility. And D is not cutting your x-axis 3 times. So we can eliminate D. Answer is either A or B. We're going to identify our zeros. Here, this is negative 1. This is 0. And this is 1, 2, 3. Over here, your zeros are negative 2, 0, and positive 2. Our function was x cubed minus 4x. I'm going to start with the A. So wherever I see x, I'm going to plug in negative 1, and I'm hoping to get, you got it right, 0. So this is negative 1 to the third minus 4 times negative 1. Negative 1 to the third is negative 1 minus 4 times negative 1. Now I can tell from this that I will not get 0. This will be negative 1 minus 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. So this becomes negative 1 plus 4. And when the signs are different, you subtract, keep the sign the larger. So by plugging in the negative 1, I did not get 0, I got 3. So your answer is B. I hope this video has been helpful. Good luck on your TAS examination.